So against my better judgment, I decided to watch some more of How I Met Your Father, the sequel series to How I Met Your Mother that nobody asked for. How I Met Your Mother is a sitcom that I really like. Years ago, we did a Nothing Cast with my friend Katie on it. Check that out. I think I got a lot of my thoughts on the show out in that episode. It's a pretty good time. But today we're talking about the sequel series, How I Met Your Father, starring Hilary Duff and some other people. I started watching this during quarantine because what else was I gonna do? And also, this is just every type of thing that exists now is just a sequel or reboot of some other franchise. So sure, why the heck not? Give it a chance. First season's not very long. I don't know, and apparently enough people watched it that it's getting a second season. So now we're on season 2, and I've seen the first one now, and I have some thoughts. But the thing I wanted to talk about is that I also watched a just random episode of How I Met Your Mother. Well, not completely random. It was just the episode that my parents happened to be on, and I wanted to talk about that episode and all the things that it does that are interesting that How I Met Your Father doesn't really do. I don't know when I'm going to edit this because I don't have time to do stuff, but I have thoughts and I'm awake, even though it's nighttime, so whatever. Here we go. The episode in question of himym that we're talking about is, what is it called? The Front Porch. The episode in question of himym is called The Front Porch. And I like to talk about the structure of this episode and break it down and go into like all the creative and interesting things that the show does that himym is sort of lacking. So we're bringing out the whiteboard and we're going to talk about the structure of this episode, starting with the A plot. So this one, the plot is that Ted is dating this girl from the 70s show, which also has a sequel series now. Fucking help me. There's no original things that exist. Everything is a legacy reboot. Help. But she is the worst in this show, and nobody likes her, and the plot happens when they break up at the start of this episode, and all of Ted's friends are like, good, she sucks. Also, we set up the B plot where Robin has this new show super early in the morning, and none of her friends have ever watched it because it's too early in the morning. So they decide that, hey, let's get together and watch an episode, setting up our B plot and the setting for our A plot. So all the characters except for Robin gather in Marshall and Lily's apartment to watch Robin's show. So the A plot is Ted's relationship. That's what that says. And the B plot is Robin's show. This is what I'm calling it. So all the main characters are gathered in Marshall and Lily's apartment. Ted figures out that the reason that he broke up with girl is that Lily sabotaged their relationship. She secretly put one of Robin's earrings in Ted's room to make the girl, that 70s girl, make it think that Robin was and Ted was together. Those are words. Ted confronts Lily with this accusation just as Robin's show begins, and he mutes the TV in order to have a dramatic conversation between Lily and Ted mostly. The other characters are also there. So this sets up the main gimmick of this episode, which is that Ted and Lily are having a dramatic fight in a scene that would fit in any drama, no problem. Well, not any drama, but like in a more dramatic show easily. But this is a silly sitcom with goofy, wacky characters. So in the background of their fight, there's all kinds of wacky shit going on Robin's show that they're missing. And this keeps escalating throughout the episode. It starts off with Robin shouting out her friends, and we can just see from her expressions that she's like talking about how much her friends mean to her. She holds up a picture to them. She's like saying, I love you and stuff. And meanwhile, they're completely missing it because they're arguing over a bunch of petty bullshit. And it's both heartbreaking and really funny at the same time. Meanwhile, there's plot happening between Ted and Lily. So as the A plot is going on, the B plot is going on in the background as well. So Lily then talks about how her reasoning for causing Ted and that 70s girl to break up, which is what she calls the front porch. This is our first additional layer to what's happening. Keep in mind that there's two separate plot lines happening within the same frame, but on two different frequencies. One is a comedy, goofy shenanigans going wrong, and one is a dramatic storyline about friends in an argument about their relationships. And there's a layer of irony between these two as well, because these like crazy shenanigans are going on in the background, and our main characters who are supposed to be watching this are completely missing it. And it's like the most insane thing that's ever happened on Robin's show. So now we're introducing another layer to this already complicated storyline going on in the concept of the front porch. This is an imagined dreamscape layer that exists within the story. Lily imagines what their lives will be like in the future because Ted, Marshall, and Lily have all been friends since college, and they imagine that they'll continue to be friends for the rest of their life. So she has this imagined front porch in the distant future when they're all old and retired, where they all play bridge together, and she imagines whoever Ted is dating to be there, and if they don't feel like they fit in, then she doesn't like them, and she ends up breaking them up. And we get full-ass like sequences of what this looks like, and it's funny, it's interesting. They're playing bridge, but Lily doesn't know how bridge works, so she's like making up the rules, and the characters are just like saying, "I raised you 3 bridges," and stuff like that. It's funny and clever and interesting. This leads to a follow-up question from Ted, which is that, wait a minute, have you done this with other girls that I've dated? To which Lily goes, only a few times, which introduces our next layer of the plot line. I'm gonna go this way because this layer is in the past. What do I call this? Lily's meddling, I guess. I don't know. I don't have a good name for this timeline. But so these are cutaway flashbacks to other times in the past where Lily has meddled with Ted's past girlfriends. There's one where they were in college. There was one where Ted was at some kind of Star Wars convention. And eventually this leads to him realizing that Lily broke up him and Robin, who dated 2 seasons ago, I think. Most of these things operate on rule of 3s. Like the front porch, for example, we'll go through quickly. The first one is Lily imagining Ted and that 70s girl together, and they don't fit in with their group still. Second one is a flashback that's actually connected to the third Lily's meddling plotline. We'll just put a dotted line to sort of indicate that, and it's sort of a flashback to her previous front porch imaginary flash forward, where she imagines Robin and Ted together on the front porch, and they're still fighting about how Ted wanted kids and she wanted to focus on her career or whatever. The third front porch is at almost the very end of the episode, where Ted almost gets back together with that 70s girl, but then she's like, I don't want to be friends with any of your friends anymore, since Lily like meddled with our lives, which is like kind of fair, but like also he's been friends with them forever, so like he's gonna keep being friends with them. But like she does have a point. Lily meddles in a lot of shit and gets away with it, but that's a topic for another discussion time. The point is that he imagines just him and that 70s girl in the future with no Marshall and Lily, and he's like, oh man, I don't want to live in that future. So he ends up breaking up with her. So going back to the Lily's meddlings also follows the rule of 3. So we get one that's when they were in college, and then another flashback to sometime after that when Ted was at some kind of Star Wars convention, and then the third time is to Ted and when Ted was dating Robin. Now when Ted was dating Robin, that was a whole plot line back in season 2. So not only is this a flashback, it's also a retcon, and it even connects to a previous episode. So I'm adding another thing on here. Retcon / previous episode. So keep that in mind. This is where one of the strongest elements of writing goes into this episode, which is that we find out that Lily subtly influenced, well, not so subtly influenced Ted and Robin to have this discussion about where they see themselves in 5 years. And there's like this really, really clever bit that makes it feel like they thought of this when they were first writing that episode. I kind of doubt that they did, but it's like so seamless that it makes you think like, maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe they're just geniuses. Either way, it's really good writing and a very good and effective retcon. Lily suggests to Ted, hey, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, you probably want to be married, for example. And meanwhile, she suggests to Robin, hey, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You might want to see yourself traveling. Maybe you go into Tokyo or Paris. I can't remember if it's Paris, but I'm going to go with Paris. And then we see a scene from a previous episode where Ted and Robin end up breaking up, where they end up talking about their future, and they get into, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Ted repeats what Lily said about himself, which is that, hey, in 5 years, I probably want to be married. And Robin, almost like subconsciously wanting to not just repeat what Lily said about herself, says, well, I want to go see myself, I don't know, going to Argentina or something. But Ted's not buying it. So then she goes with the example of, I don't know, or maybe Tokyo or Paris. The example that Lily gave her. It's fucking genius writing, and it works on multiple levels. Because, like, the first time you see this episode, those just feel like different examples of things that she said, and it still feels like pretty natural. But on rewatch, now it has this extra layer of, like, her subconsciously not wanting to just repeat what Lily told her about herself, but then she inevitably does anyways. It's really fucking genius, and also a really clever way to make it seem like, oh, Lily didn't just tell them exactly what to say. They still tried to influence it, but she made some good points, and like they ended up kind of falling back on her analysis of where they were going to end up in 5 years anyways. Very fucking good writing, good 4D chess. I don't know how they did it, but it's really, really clever, and it's just this one small thing of Robin saying Argentina first and Lily not suggesting Argentina. Fucking genius writing. It's cool. I like it a lot. So those are all the main layers of the main plot going on. So then let's go back to the B plot. So B plot also kind of has things that escalate in rule of threes. One, we have at first something catches on fire, none of the characters see it. Then a guy passes out and Robin gives him CPR, saving his life. None of the main characters see it. It's funny. Third, which is the most interesting to me, Robin helps deliver a baby live on camera, which is mostly just to like have things escalate, but it also connects thematically. I'm going to do a squiggly line for that. That looked really bad. To the discussion in the dramatic A plot that's going on at this point, which is when Ted and Lily are talking about how Ted wants to have kids one day and Robin doesn't. And Lily's like, that's going to be a problem if you ever got married. That would come up. Meanwhile, Robin is helping to deliver a baby live on TV and none of the characters witness it. Maybe it's just like the natural escalation of like, what if something caught on fire? What if somebody had a heart attack? What if somebody was delivering a baby? Like those are the something crazy visual going on in the background. Like that's how I would escalate it. You know, those are like some pretty good examples of things and in escalation as far as making crazy stuff happen in the background goes. But at the same time, like it kind of connects thematically to what they're talking about in the like serious storyline as well. Maybe that was intentional. Maybe it just worked out that way. Either way, it's cool. And I'd say just pretend. If they didn't think of it, I'd just tell them, pretend you did. Also, I forgot about another element of the A plot. So while this like dramatic Ted and Lily argument is going on, they also do a bit on top of that at a certain point. What do I call this? I guess just homage. Movie homage. I'm calling it MH for movie homage, which you can maybe see. I don't know, which isn't the best name for it. But on top of this dramatic storyline that does have jokes going on, while there's jokes going on in the background, at one point the dialogue becomes a parody of the "You Can't Handle the Truth" scene from A Few Good Men. Just cause it would be fun if that happened, and it does, and it's fun.
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know, that Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saved lives.
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know, that those breakups, while tragic, probably saved you from a crappy and very expensive first marriage.
Did you order the code red? I did the job. Did you order the code red? You're goddamn right I did! Did you break me and Robin up?
I did what I had to do.
Did you break me and Robin up?
Right, I did.
It also still works on a dramatic level because like that's a dramatic scene that they're pulling from, but then it adds another layer of comedy too because you realize they're pulling dialogue straight from A Few Good Men. On top of that, it also works even if you haven't seen the movie and don't get the reference, just because it's like a well-crafted scene taken from a well-crafted movie, but like the dialogue is still compelling and still engaging and still funny yet dramatic, all while Robin's delivering a baby or whatever in the in the background of the shot. It's fucking good show. But those are all the main storylines, except for the C plot, which I haven't mentioned yet. The C plot is really simple. Basically, it's just that we needed something for Barney and Marshall to do, so they talk about and compare their different styles of pajamas. This is happening like in between the dramatic stuff with Ted and Lily for some more jokes. Barney has this suit-themed pajamas, which look really nice, but like not necessarily super comfortable, versus Marshall's nightshirt, which, you know, it looks lame, but apparently is very comfortable. This subplot also has other layers going on. We get a dream sequence of Marshall's perspective of the nightshirt pajamas, which makes you feel like you're flying. This is a bit that comes back later in the episode where Barney eventually tries on the nightshirt, and he also experiences the dreamlike flight of not wearing pants. Meanwhile, this plotline is also bookended with, you guessed it, another dream sequence layer, which turns out to be a porn parody. So at first, when Barney is asked why he wears a suit to bed, he recounts this time that these two smoking hot ladies showed up to his apartment to have a contest of who's hornier, and he's like, and because I was looking good, you know, I got lucky or whatever. And then the other characters are like, that definitely didn't happen, because that's the exact plot from a porn that I've heard of. I don't know for sure. Anyways, so this element is a plot of a pornography movie recounted as a real event that happened. So his whole argument is that for the suit jammas is that although that may not have happened for real, it theoretically could happen, and if it ever did, he would be ready. This ends up coming back at the very end of the episode as a little end stinger joke where Barney has now been converted to the nightshirt pajamas, but then a hot girl does come to his door in the middle of the night, and she's just like, never mind. But then Barney yells at the camera, so again, I think this sequence might be sort of more of a dream type scenario and not necessarily a real thing that's happening. But in the C plot, we still have multiple different dream layers going on that are just like for jokes. Meanwhile, there's a complicated A and B plot happening simultaneously with multiple flashbacks, including a flashback that retcons a previous episode, and dream sequence flash forwards to a potential future. All of these different timelines include different sets, different costumes, different setups, well, except for A and C, but this technically those are in the same setting, but C also splits off into multiple different dream layers as well. And this is all just one episode of the show. Also keep in mind that the entire show is happening within the framing device of Ted telling this story to his kids, which is sort of the point that I'm getting at. The show is ultimately about telling stories, and the way we tell stories, the way we misremember stories, the way we exaggerate certain elements in order to like embellish things, and using the medium of film, or in this case TV, to visualize all the imperfections, all the running jokes you have, all of your memories, all of your misrememberings, all of your unreliable narration, and just like the way that people tell stories to each other. Circling back around to How I Met Your Father, if I were to break down the first episode of season 2, I mean, I guess we should draw it to be fair. Remember this. Study it. This will all be on the test. So the first episode of season 2 of How I Met Your Father, we get a little flashback recapping some of the stuff that happened in the first season, which I forgot most of. But the main thing that's happening in this episode is that one guy who was engaged in previous season got married at the end of the first season, and now we're having a little reception party at the bar that they hang out at with all the characters. Meanwhile, Hilary Duff was bouncing between Josh Peck and that other main guy, and it didn't work out with either of them. But, now the guy from the first episode is back, and so maybe she's going to go out with him. Those are the main two things happening. All of this happens at the bar, and it's all kind of under the main A-plot. Now, there is a lot going on in this episode. There's many characters. There's 6 main characters instead of 5, plus several different love interests who pop in and out of the show. So there is a lot going on in this one setting with just these main characters. but it's pretty much entirely in this one setting with just these main characters. Now, to be fair, there is a couple flashback cutaway jokes, so we'll put a little extra layer there. But these are really brief, and they don't like end up building to anything really. There is one joke that like comes back about the one dude who liked this one song in college, and then eventually they end up playing the song. That's it. But there isn't like another element to these flashbacks. It's not part of an ongoing like narrative concept. It's just here's a couple jokes and that's it, and it only happens a couple times. There is one other element, which is a flash forward cliffhanger thing at the end of the episode. We get a really brief scene of her being like, oh, I didn't work out with any of these three guys who I thought I maybe had a chance with, and I thought I might have hit rock bottom, but rock bottom didn't happen until a little bit later. And then we cut to a flash forward where she's driving, upset, she's on the phone, she says something like, Mom, I need to talk to you. I think I might be dating Dad. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then she crashes her car, and you're like, oh no, she crashed her car. And then she gets out and she crashed her, and look whose car she crashed into. It's Barney from the first show. And that's the little cliffhanger, because we have zero faith in people watching this show without the original cast members showing up at some point. Robin had a cameo in the last episode of the previous season, and it was like one of the better parts of the show. Yeah, so she crashes into Barney's thing, and I have a lot of problems with this scene. At first it starts out fine. A flash forward to something's going wrong. Mom, I think I might be dating Dad. All right, that's an interesting enough mystery that I'm curious to see what happens. And oh no, she crashes her car. Now things are really going wrong. And then it's Barney, someone she doesn't know. And then we like cut to the framing device of this story, which is that it's Hilary in the future, but she's played by someone else, and she's telling the story to her kid, and her kid's like, ooh, who is that? She's like, oh, I'll get to it later. But like, it doesn't really make sense as like a cliffhanger, because Hilary Duff doesn't know who Barney is. Hilary Duff's kid in the future doesn't know who Barney is. So it's not really like a reveal for them. It's a reveal for the audience, because we know who Barney is. But it's also not really a reveal that, like, raises the stakes in any way. She's talking about how, like, this is the moment that I hit rock bottom, and, like, she's dating her dad or something. That's a problem, obviously. And she crashed her car. Oh, no, and look who she crashed her car into. Barney. Like, okay, that doesn't actually, like, make it worse that she crashed her car into him, necessarily. If anything, he'll probably end up helping her out. It's just like a weird narrative thing to do, and it's also weird because it's sort of like the Khan moment from Into Darkness, where it's like, I am Khan, and they're like, all right, I don't know who that is, so that doesn't mean anything to me, but the fans are supposed to be like, oh, look, it's that character, but like, it doesn't mean anything to the characters watching. I don't know. It's weird. And the other thing that bothered me about the seasons is I'm like, if this was the original show, there'd be like another like third element that's completely unexplained that like we'll get to. Like her clothes would be burned up, or like she'd have like a weird costume on, or her hair would be like a different color, and we'd be like, oh, that's weird. Why is she dressed like that? And then eventually when we got to the episode that catches up with this plot line, that would be explained. But she's just wearing like normal clothes, which isn't like a bad thing necessarily. It's just like this thing that's like supposed to like be intriguing and raise the stakes, and like this is what I keep us invested in what's happening. And the most interesting thing about it is that there's a character from the previous show in it. Is like there should be like more elements to this mystery that you're like trying to set up here, because again, look at the board, not a whole lot going on in this episode. Like, yes, there is different plot lines between all the different characters. There's like this couple that's just broken up, but then they end up having sex. There's a whole bit with the character Ellen, who's the token gay character, and she has this like sequin design of her face, which I actually thought was a really funny bit. So there's like things going on, but they're like normal sitcom things. There isn't like a more elaborate framing device. There isn't like multiple layers of story going on. There isn't like people telling stories that have like a interesting hook to them. There isn't like a concept that like connects all the different storylines. It's just like sitcom things happening. I think this episode was actually one of the stronger ones of this show, which kind of highlights what the show is like missing in certain ways. But this episode did a better job of like highlighting the different actors' strengths and stuff. Hilary Duff got to sing, and it was like in a very awkward setting, which she does very well. Josh Peck got to be all manic and crazy, which he's good at. So like there's some stuff that was done well, but like it's kind of, the thing about this show is it's really kind of missing this like creative storytelling angle to the show that himym had, that himym does not. Yes, we have the framing device of Hilary in the future telling this story to her kid, and the twist on that formula in this one is that instead of it like building up to eventually meeting the mother, in this one we've already met the father in the pilot, where we introduce several different red herrings, and one of them is going to end up being the father, but we don't know who yet, which is kind of interesting and a clever way to do a twist on the previous formula. But that was just like one element of the whole show. The other big thing about this show versus the original is that the characters, like, they're fine, but they don't really have like a really strong dynamic or like reason to be in each other's lives. The original show had 5 main characters, and every character had like a very specific purpose. The show mostly focused on Ted and him trying to find his future wife and what would become the future titular mother. Ted is joined by his 2 best friends, Barney, who is like, hey, you're young, you gotta be single and party and sleep with as many girls as possible. And the opposite and we have Marshall, who is in a committed relationship with Lily. Ted wants to end up where Marshall is, but currently he's kind of more in line with Barney. And then, of course, we have Robin, who initially is Ted's main will they, won't they, and then she becomes part of their friend group and joins them in all kinds of wacky shenanigans. So every character has a very specific purpose and relationship to Ted, our main lead, which is all related to the core idea of the show. How I Met Your Father has more characters, and because they have this like different gimmick, most of the characters end up meeting in the pilot, which means that they weren't already friends before. So it's like a little bit like less believable that these characters all hang out as friends, because like they're still kind of getting to know each other. On top of that, you have everyone is a lot more diverse, which is a good thing. The show takes place in New York, so, you know, that's one of the most diverse cities in the world. It makes sense that there would be a diverse group of people. But, like, because they're, like, trying to emphasize how different they are and how diverse they are, it feels like they don't really have anything in common. So again, I'm not really sure like why these people all hang out. Like Hilary is friends with this girl. She's dating this guy from England who's like one of the better characters because he's actually like a funny comedic character and not just like a guy. And they have like a problematic kind of toxic relationship, but it's also kind of fun and goofy. And also he's like really stupid, which is kind of funny. But then there's like the main guy who's like the main will they won't they with Hilary, and then he has a sister who is the Asian lesbian girl who's there, who's kind of funny and quirky at certain points. Again, I really like that sequin joke. For some reason it totally worked for me. And then he's friends with the guy who owns the bar, who just got married in the beginning of season 2, and all these people hang out for some reason, right? It doesn't quite all like add up, and it does, and like we're playing with different, you know, character dynamics and stuff, but there isn't like everyone doesn't like have a role in Hilary's life and like where and like what she wants out of life and like where her life is going and stuff. She sort of has the same kind of like romantic hopes of Ted, but like none of the other characters like are related to that journey very much, other than like some of them might be the father. And I'm sure on some level it's a little bit intentional, because like the main problem that How I Met Your Mother ended up facing was basically just that the show ended up being too good for its own ending. What I mean is that Robin and Ted were always supposed to end up together, but by the time they got to the end of the show, Robin and Barney actually ended up having a lot more chemistry. So there's a whole storyline where they end up getting married, and it goes on for way too long, and then they end up breaking up in the finale so that Robin and Ted can get can get together, and it feels like kind of sloppy, and we have to like character assassin Barney in order to make it work. I don't think it fully works, and the main problem, well, two main problems. One, that was a relationship that just kind of happened naturally throughout the course of making the show, because Kobe Smulders and Neil Patrick Harris turned out to have very good chemistry. And two, when we finally did meet the mother, who was a brand new character, the plan was to kill her off so that then Ted can end up with Robin, the one that, you know, everyone will surely want him to end up with. But then, oopsie doopsie, the mother ends up being the best character on the show, and we don't want her to get killed off. It makes sense, because why would Ted tell this long-ass story otherwise? But it's like, that's who we wanted him to end up with, turns out, because she was so fucking good that you, like, ruined your own plan by making her too likable. So I think they're trying to avoid some of those problems in this show by, like, not having a plan of who Hilary is going to end up with. Or maybe they do. I kind of doubt it, and being like, oh, we'll just, you know, have her interact with all these different characters. We'll focus on one or two as, like, the main is they, won't they? But if she ends up having more chemistry with the British guy, then we'll just make them get together. So, I don't know. My point is that How I Met Your Mother is, like, a very good show with not only a really strong and focused overarching concept and idea, it also just has this, like, really fun and playful structure of playing with the concept of telling stories, and when people exaggerate stories, how we imagine things to be, how we remember things wrong, how we intentionally mislead people or are, you know, unreliable narrators, and the way that we tell our stories and stuff. All of that is visualized in really interesting ways through the medium of film and television, in ways that you normally don't see in, like, a standard laugh track sitcom. How I Met Your Father, like, occasionally touches on some of these ideas, but, like, doesn't quite do anything really interesting with them. It's also just, like, not nearly as, like, wacky as the first show. Like, I don't have my chart anymore, but in the episode I was talking about, Robin gets set on fire, and that's the third most interesting thing that happens in the B plot of that episode. This show is like pitching the future worst thing that ever happens to Hilary Duff, and that she's maybe dating her dad. Okay, that is bad. And then she gets into a car accident. Okay, that kind of escalates it. But then there's just a guy there. Okay. I mean, that doesn't seem that bad, to be honest. Mostly just in comparison to how crazy stuff gets in How I Met Your Mother. But that's, like, I don't know. That's the whole fun of, like, of the show, is that it, like, plays with all these different formats of storytelling and different ideas and stuff, and, like, is clearly also, like, a big fan of different movies and stuff, and it is happy to just, you know, steal ideas from that whenever applicable. How I Met Your Father doesn't really do that much with its premise. I really want to like this show because I like the main actors for the most part, and I don't know. I don't want to not like a show. I'd rather a show be really awesome, and I love it. And there's a lot of potential there, and there's a lot of potential with this format, because we've seen this format done really well in the previous show. Anyways, I don't know when the fuck I'm going to edit this, but the point is, I don't know what the point is. So that's my thoughts on stuff. I might watch more of this show. I don't know. It seems like the biggest hook is like, well, maybe the previous characters will show up. It's like, yeah, I like the previous characters, but if that's the best you could do, like, you gotta give me a little more to keep me watching. Like, what do you think? Am I the only one that's watching this show? Apparently not, because it's on its second season. Are you a fan of How I Met Your Mother? Which boy should Hilary kiss? I don't know. Leave a comment or something. And check out my previous Nothing Cast on the original show. I think it's a good time. I don't know when I'm going to have time to edit this, but assuming I do at some point, hey, check out my Teen Titans videos, and also She-Hulk videos probably coming out soon, or not, because I'm working on this instead. I don't know what I'm doing with my time. Help me. I'm trapped. Help me. I need to manage my time better, clearly. I don't know what's happening. Who's the father? Leave a comment. I don't know. I don't know how to do outros. Goodbye. I'm talking for too long. See you later.